Welcome back to Oh Gross, and today we're actually dropping a second episode because we are rerunning, like we said, parts of the LA Fire series we did with Kerry Sanders. And so today, this episode we are rerunning is called Behind the Lens with Kerry Sanders, and it was a fascinating look into his career. Again, lots of information to take away on what to do in a crisis, but he really got personal with us, and he really shared some intimate stories that I think were incredible and not everyone heard before.
Kerry Sanders is one of my journalistic idols. I loved
We grew up
hearing,
with him.
We grew up with him.
Yeah.
He's just a man of integrity when it comes to journalism. He's a fascinating person.
We could have talked to him for 5 days straight.
15 days straight.
15, exactly. It's a great inside look to, what it's like to really be there in the moment during all different types of crisis, and also
The human element
of it. He never loses that, but yet never loses the goal, which is getting information out, right? And making sure that people are safe, or they're getting the knowledge they need in that moment when you just have seconds, moments, minutes, if you're, whatever it might be, to get that information out and help save lives. I mean, it's a great episode, so we hope you enjoy it.
Your gross out journey starts right here on Oh Gross.
Welcome back to part 2 of a conversation with Kerry Sanders. And today we'll have more of an opportunity to hear his personal stories as a correspondent for more than 30 years at NBC covering disasters.
I'm so excited.
And we will continue to talk about all different ways we can be more prepared in a crisis, because when something big like this happens, we all start thinking about, are we prepared? And as we mentioned before, the word gross can be used in so many different ways. So at Oh Gross, we don't just talk about things that some people might think are disgusting or are afraid to talk about their health.
Absolutely.
And anytime anything big like a crisis happens, there can be gross oversight and gross misinformation.
Yes.
Today, we're going to focus on that aspect and how we can all be more informed and the best way to be informed. And also, what is the information that we need to help put out there as citizens, as a community, to help people. Once again, we are honored to have Kerry Sanders with us.
Well, thank you.
And we want to start with the Los Angeles fires.
It just so happens that you're talking so much about fires. Everybody has their fear.
Right.
My greatest fear is fire. It happened when I was a child. My sister's hair caught on fire. It never went away from me. It's my greatest fear. And so I was at a fire up in Northeast Florida, and it was a pretty dramatic fire. And I was with Roger Perhoda, cameraman, Lori Smith, a sound woman, and me. And we're going in, and there was a fire truck there, and the fire truck was smoke everywhere.
Oh my goodness.
We're like, okay, let's follow the hose, because if we follow the hose and the smoke, we'll find the firemen, okay? I made one, thankfully, smart decision, because I was the one driving. We followed that hose in, and as we followed the hose in, the firemen were running out. They had dropped the hose, and they said, get out of here now. Get out of here as fast as you can, because it was blowing over. Here's the lucky, smart decision I made. I had turned our truck in a position away from the fire rather than pulling into the fire and just parking. Why I did that? Probably something that I'd done during a hurricane told me, always have the car facing, or the truck facing in your exit route, not your entry to get out.
Yeah.
Very smart.
I think backing into the spot is so interesting, because Tom Morris Jr., who also is one of my friends and worked with me at America's Most Wanted and several other shows, he always, anywhere he goes, he backs into a spot for the same reason.
Yeah.
So that there's always a clear exit.
Well, I suspect it saved our lives, because I got in that, we jumped in and we drove away. The firemen jumped in theirs. They didn't even disconnect the hose. They just drove out of there. That's how flashovers can happen and how quickly the fire can move.
Speaking of fear, can you walk us through a time where you had your own fear probably building up, but you still had to report? I mean, I think of you in cars and in all these different locations getting the word out there.
There's probably two that come to mind as the most precarious. Eliminating war zones, which war zones are more difficult than Mother Nature, because you have learned how Mother Nature is likely to actually do something. In a war zone, you never know what the human element is going to be. You never know what somebody else is thinking. You never know how they are going to do something, whereas Mother Nature, you can understand a little bit. So probably the two most dangerous moments for me were, first of all, Hurricane Andrew, which is probably a story that put me on the map to begin with nationally.
Yes.
It was, at the time, believed to be a Category 4. It was really a Category 5, ultimately. The wind gauge at one of the power plants broke at 240 miles an hour. So we're talking about, if there was a Category 6, it would have been a Category 6. An incredibly strong storm. I was with my cameraman, and we decided we would go down to Homestead, which is where it turned out to be ground zero. We didn't have a really good piece of information like we do today from the National Hurricane Center. Now they can predict within 10 miles where the eye is going to come ashore. And we're driving around waiting for the storm to come in. And it came in at night. And the only reason we didn't die that night is because it was too dark to see anything in Homestead. And so we drove a little bit north.
Oh, yeah.
Thank God we did, because we rode the hurricane out in the sedan underneath the metro rail, which is like an elevated train with some concrete posts around us. But everything was flying at us. Everything was throwing the car around. I was actually down underneath on the floorboard, doing my report from the floorboard and reporting out the chaos of what was going on. And just to remind people, because this is back in the early 90s, this is a storm that it rewrote the building codes in Florida because it just took off so much of what South Florida was. I mean, people who had grown up here didn't know where the streets they were standing on existed. It really was a devastating storm.
Yeah.
And the second most dangerous moment, Hurricane Hugo's coming into South Carolina, Charleston. We got a very late start to go cover it. Driving up from Florida, as we arrive in Charleston, the hurricane is hitting. And I opened up the door to the car to get out, to get inside what at the time was a Holiday Inn, and it was this circular building. The wind grabbed the door and peeled it all the way around. That's how powerful the wind was. So I was able to just pull the door back a little bit, but it bent it to get out of the car, make my way over to the entrance to the hotel, which is all boarded up. My cameraman, Jim Craven, is ahead of me. He's making his way in. I'm behind him. I'm carrying the tripod. And as we're walking, hugging the circular hotel, little did I know, because the water has already come up and I'm wading through the water, that the tree that I'm walking next to is planted in a sunken planter. And so the land goes like this, and then it goes down where the tree is. And I went down in the water up to here with the tripod in my hand, and I start screaming, "Jim, the wind is blowing. Your sound does not carry." There was nobody there to help me. So I used the tripod to use it sort of as let me put it on hard land and use it as a crutch to lift myself up. I got out, made my way over to where Jim was. The doors are shut, everything is boarded up, and we start banging to ask people to let us to come in. They're not opening the doors because to them, it sounds like coconuts and other things are hitting the doors, until we finally were able to tell them, let us in. They opened the doors, we got in. We went to the second floor because the water wound up washing out the ground floor, and the part of the second floor was, getting soaked. To tell you how powerful that one was, up on the top, they had a circular restaurant with giant grand piano, and in the restaurant, back in the kitchen, they had walk-in refrigerators for the people to cook. After the storm passed and we went up there, refrigerators gone, piano gone, everything in the room gone. It was just completely wiped out, and we realized that if we had not made it inside the building onto the second floor, we probably would have died.
It's incredible.
It is.
But, these moments that we put ourselves in that are incredibly dangerous are a calculation, but at the end of the day, you are calculating what you think Mother Nature is going to do, but you do not know 100%. You just don't know. News reporting is kind of like a fireman. Everybody else runs away. The reporting team runs too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What worked really well in these fires in California, talking to my colleagues, is that CAL FIRE had their public information officers out and about, they were not only available, but they would see a reporter or a group of reporters and go over, do you need anything? And they could immediately go on camera, because it's all live coverage, and start answering questions. And that proactive nature of CAL FIRE is phenomenal. You will not see that in a lot of calamities. One, understaffed communities. Two, somebody saying, well, I can't speak, so-and-so has to be the only person who speaks. Often that's an elected official who wants to get their face out there and has a very different agenda than just trying to help people's lives.
Yeah.
So to the credit, the folks in Los Angeles, Cal Fire, did a phenomenal job during and in the aftermath. California is a state with a unique law that gives news media access. They cannot be prevented from getting in there. Certainly you can't go walk on somebody's private property, but you can go down the street that is closed off. And to the credit of the authorities, it's credentialed media.
Yes.
And the authorities were able to track down some people who were in there with fake credentials, passing themselves off as news media, but really attempting to, we assume, loot. And the real credit, we always talk about the heroes. A lot of credit really goes to fire and police who respect the media, get the information out through the media, but then are also protecting the community.
And you feel it. I mean, I felt watching, hearing from the first responders makes you feel safer. It makes you feel like they're in it with you. It makes you feel like the information, is true. And I just think it's so important. And we felt it here. We felt it. The fact that they were constantly on the news, constantly talking to reporters, I think really helped the situation in general and also calm people. And so they can hear the information, because when you are in a panic, you do not hear the information.
And that's one of the things that always drives me crazy as a reporter is that you come up to somebody who is in a uniform and you ask them a question and they go, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to talk. You got to talk to so-and-so. First of all, you're live. Second of all, you can talk. This is the way I will describe it. If you take a straw and you only look down the straw and that's all you see, talk about that. I can't tell you what's going on 2 blocks away. I can tell you what's happening right here because this is where I am. We closed off this street because we were told the fire might be heading this direction. We're trying to get people out and we don't want to let people go up the street and cause a problem. Great.
I do think that you brought up a good point though, Kerry, because that's why you are such a legend, is saying it a certain way. Even if you have to go straight out with the information, saying it away and saying, we haven't 100% confirmed this, but I mean, I watched on, I won't say what news channel, but it was a national coverage. And the reporter was like, well, they're not refreshing it was a young guy. They're not refreshing the website yet. So we don't know if XYZ has been evacuated. Well, we are already in LA 2 hours before this location had already been evacuated. I was like, did he just on national news say refreshing the website?
Right.
Call somebody.
Yes.
Right. I say that all the time. Yes, pick up the phone and talk to people.
I'm going to sound old right now. And there seems to be a problem with this generation of youngsters that is afraid to pick up the phone and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
They want to do it all by text or whatever. And this comes back to empowering even the rookie to feel confident in their job, but it comes from the top. It happened really well with Cal Fire and the folks there. Other communities don't necessarily follow that lead, and they should.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I do have one question for you that you might be able to answer, because they kept talking on the news about containment and growth. Containment and growth. You look at one fire, and it was that, I think it was it might have been the Calabasas, the one that was near Hidden Hills. And it was contained at 30%, and they said it's not going to be a problem. But then you look at the Palisades fire when it was at 30%, right? And it's still a problem. So some of the lingo that we were hearing, we didn't understand, and there was no one actually explaining it. And I don't know if that's because the people reporting it didn't even know, or,
it probably becomes shorthand, and I don't live there. And the fires I've covered have been just out of control fires, and then everything burns down. I haven't covered these ones where it's here and then it jumps here, et cetera. It's just they get big, burn everything down, and it's over with. So I haven't had the Santa Ana wind impact. As a reporter, I can't talk to that. I don't have the expertise in that. And so from very far away, I see that kind of lingo, and I assume one of two things. Either people in LA understand it, or it's cop talk, or in this case, fire talk. It's kind of like,
you don't know it.
It's kind of like, the suspect was seen fleeing on foot in a northerly direction. It doesn't mean anything.
I always say perp, and everyone's like, what's a perp?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that falls on, generally, I would say, in live coverage, that to me would fall on the news anchors. And
It's like inside
maybe because it's science, and Jenny can tell us, but maybe it falls on the weatherman to explain what that means.
Yeah. I think whatever department that we're dealing with, a lot of it comes down to education. And then hopefully that department has communicated with the reporters they're talking to so that they can retrieve that information and give that information to the public in that third grade language to where we all can understand what's going on.
Right. The 2% contained, to me here, means nothing. It means like the fire's out of control.
Right. It's great. It's good. All good.
It was really, because I had so many people have asked this question, nobody can give us an answer. And it's really funny because, again, you're looking at one fire that was 30% contained and they said, don't worry, probably because it was probably the 30% contained was where the home side would be, right? I'm guessing. But that's me speculating. That's not me knowing that that's fact.
This is why in the aftermath, what they call the after action reports, they examine what is it that we need to do to help people structurally. It's why hurricanes have names, because it helps people focus and understand what's going on. It may be that there needs to be a different way to explain a category 1, category 2, category 3, category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Maybe there needs to be another way that boils down what contained means and what the percentage means. And it may be a color system. There's all different types of ways that probably have already been discussed. It just takes a while to then say, okay, this is the moment where we need to evolve what we've been using for language. You know,
I think so.
Yeah, that's a really
Air
good point.
quality too, kind of the same thing with particulate matter. It's the same thing. Unless that you're studying, you know what ozone or particulate matter is, right? When someone's reporting on that, it might come across as scary, not just unknown. So I think that you're right, Carrie. I think that a lot of it will have to be studied. And how do we get the information out so that the public feels safe or the public knows what to do, what to prepare for?
3 parts per 100,000 sounds like it's nothing.
Right.
And that 3 parts per 100,000 for Kara's child who has asthma could literally mean the difference between life and death without an inhaler or without some sort of medical attention.
100%. And okay, so Carrie, because you've had so much experience and you've just, as you said, have covered every single natural disaster except for a volcano erupting, knock on wood. Coming.
Exactly.
But I want to know, okay, not just the reporter is Kerry Sanders. You get to a place and a crisis hits. What is your internal checklist as all this knowledge you've now accumulated in all the situations you've been in? So let's say you were here in California and the fires broke out, or if you're in Ohio and a bunch of tornadoes break out, walk us through where your mind goes and what the checklist is.
I think the first thing is when I'm going to that location is geography, because I don't know the geography. I don't know the roads. And so you call up maps on your phone and you think to yourself, well, I've got GPS, I can use this. You probably need to take screenshots because you may not have the option to have a connection when you're in the worst place.
Excellent information for everyone.
Yes.
Second of all, is anybody on your team from the region? And if they're not, what do you need to do to get a better understanding of physically where you are? Heading in, I'm always aware of what I don't know. Hopefully somebody there with me has a little bit more knowledge. And if I don't have that person with me who has more knowledge, and I see a firefighter or I see a whomever, what's it take to stop and get out and talk to them and get a little information? They will teach you in 30 seconds some very important things. Very important things. Now, in LA, you're probably going to be able to get to a place that wasn't hit, and you can go to your Walmart or your Target or whatever. I think you have Ralph's out there is the name of your grocery store.
Yes.
You can get your supplies. There's going to be that sort of stuff.
Yes.
When I get to there, we have our team. We discuss what we're going to do, because you don't have, hey, let's all go in and charge in. You have to have a plan, and you also have to recognize it's a democracy. So if it's a team of 4 and you as the reporter, like, let's go there, and 3 or even 2 members of the team say, it's a democracy. You're not going in there. There's nothing gained to be headstrong and running in because I'm going to be the guy who got the shot on the air and all that kind of stuff that can the ego that can get in the way.
Or even people within their family. This is such great advice. I mean, my husband, when the panic set in that it was getting really close and we had already evacuated, was like, I got to go back and get XYZ. And it was like the stupidest things. I was like, no, you don't.
Right.
So me and my kids were like, no, you don't. And then he was like, okay. Even for a family to understand if someone might panic and want to go back in, might panic and it is a democracy and that it's what's best for the group.
So what do I think about? I think about every single thing, whether it's conscious or subconscious, about when I'm heading to a story where it's a natural disaster and I'm not sure what it's going to be. If it's an earthquake, why would I stay in that hotel if somebody has not checked out the structure? And if I see cracks, you think that you're going to sleep in a hotel. Well, first of all, you have no idea how it was constructed to begin with. Second of all, there's aftershocks. What's going to happen next? You constantly have to be thinking. And if it's an uncomfortable experience for you to sleep in the car, isn't that a lot better than, going into a building and having something fall on your head and kill you?
Right.
Well, and I was going to ask a question about, what are one or two stories that you may have had going into a story that turned out completely different?
I think the most important thing that I learned is you can't presuppose what is going to happen. You have to be open for, and this applies to everything, not natural disasters. As a reporter, you shouldn't go in with, okay, this is the blueprint of the story I'm doing today. Let me get this person to say this and have that person say that. You should go in with your ears are open. You're listening to what people say.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I can give you many of these. I was on an island, Pensacola, for Hurricane Ivan. And when that storm came in, it had a 91-foot swell in the Gulf of Mexico, according to the NOAA readings. And when that storm came in, we decided to ride it out in what was called a dome home. And that's a home designed to withstand a hurricane. We said to our bosses, what do you think? They said, if it's going to design to withstand the hurricane, do it. Well, we got hit by 4 tornadoes during the hurricane. The storm came in, washed everything out. And when the storm was gone, we're up on the 2nd floor because the building was built up to withstand the storm surge. The stairwells were washed away. So we had to actually use our power cords as a sort of rope to get down, but our cars that we had were gone. And so we found a canoe and we went out and we found our cars out in Pensacola Bay. And we were able to smash the windows, get some of the gear out that we needed because we'd left some of it in the car. But we never expected that everything would be destroyed there. And then we were stuck there. And so at the time we used a microwave link to send our footage back to the mainland to get our story out. Our microwave link got blown out, so we couldn't send any more footage back. And this was a nighttime storm, so it's the next morning. The producer who was with us, AJ Goodwin, she's a long distance runner. She does not look her age. She looks like she's about 12 years old. She put a backpack on. This is dated now because she put videotapes in the back. And she decides to run. The storm's gone. She's going to run down the island over to the causeway and come over the causeway. As she's coming over the causeway, on the land side, there's a deputy who's looking through his binoculars and on the radio is saying, there's a little girl who must have survived the storm. She's making her way back to the mainland right now. She gets up there. He looks at her. She still looks like a kid. And she says, look, I'm with NBC News. Could you give me a ride over to this location so I can get these pictures on TV? And then he did.
Yes. Got to be fast thinking. I remember a story about Haiti when they were holding supplies in the airport and trying to get people to pay basically a bribe to get them out. And that story was amazing because it seemed like there was a lot of quick thinking and it was different than originally anticipated. And the outcome helped people.
That earthquake that hit Haiti is one of the most difficult stories I covered because of the number of dead, the number of people in pain, and the stench of death. Things don't happen quickly. It's in the Caribbean. It's hot. It is everything that could go wrong, that did go wrong, in a country that barely had at the time a functioning government and certainly doesn't have one at all now. And it was just a challenge at every level, beginning with how do you get to Haiti when there's been an earthquake? And so we flew to the Dominican Republic. And before I left, just to give people a reminder, Hispaniola is the island and it's split in half and you have Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Well, we had a private plane We're going to get there as fast as we can. First thing we did was we flew over the runway at Port-au-Prince. And the pilot, we're flying in a jet, it's not like a little propeller plane going 80 miles an hour. He looks out the window and he does a second pass and he goes, I don't know whether the runway is buckled. I'm not going to land, hit some part of a buckled runway and we crash and everybody dies. So we went over to the Dominican Republic. I fortunately prepared, thinking what's the possibility of not landing. And I called a friend of mine in the Dominican Republic from a story I'd done a long time ago and said, if anybody has a helicopter, let me know. And sure enough, there was a helicopter. And so I called the guy and he flew us over to Port-au-Prince. And that's how we were the first reporters, Western reporters. Obviously, there's people in Port-au-Prince. We were the first Western reporters to get there in a helicopter to get over there. And then we eventually had to set up on our coverage as more and more NBC people arrived. And why would you stop to think about this? But I'll tell you anyway. Reporters are doing two things. We're reporting the story, but we're also living that environment. So the producer and I set up a tent on the tarmac out there, and eventually we had to move it to another location. But every night, our question was how we were going to keep the rats away from us, because the rats are big. I mean, they're like small cats. I mean, they're big, and they're going to come chew through your stuff. Where's our food? How are we going to get gasoline? We were paying $30 a gallon, siphoned out of other vehicles to keep a vehicle going, which, by the way, we rented from Hertz at the airport. Kind of crazy to think about that. But I knew from having covered the Challenger explosion so long ago that when a calamity happens and it's in another city, another town, another part of the world, the first two things you do is you book a car and you book a hotel room. Because now in Haiti, there's no hotel room. And if there was, we weren't staying in it because of the earthquake. But it's in a system where you can at least get a car, then figure out your gas, then get around, because you got to move around. And flat tires, did you have time to pack? You're asking the go bag, did you have time to pack your Fix-A-Flat? Because you need to be able to put that in your tire when you run over a nail and all of a sudden your tire's flat. Ideally, in a situation like what happened in LA, going in and out, what we would do traditionally is we would rent two pickup trucks. So if one of the pickup truck has a problem, we have a second pickup truck to get into and abandon the first one.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
Also, the pickup trucks with the king cab, lots of space in there, but in the back, you can carry things you need in the back. You can also stand up there, elevate yourself. The cameraman can get shots from an elevated position. There's all types of advantages to having that. But all these little things that I'm mentioning, I didn't know. I learned over the years from, that would have been a smarter thing. And I got to give the credit to so many cameramen that I worked with, the Bruce Bernsteins, the Jim Cravens, the Craig Whites, all these people who were ahead of me and learned so much of what they needed to do that gets passed along to me. And so when I come back to the final little piece of what I'm telling you here is, very young reporters covering this story in LA may not have had the benefit of having had the experience of working with somebody ahead of them who gave them this information and helped them. And hopefully now they learned some things that they will keep with them and pass along. But as the reporting ranks in the big cities get younger and younger and don't have the experience of working in the small places where they learn these sort of things, it can lead back to what you say, which is your biggest concern, misinformation. And no reporter who's young and doesn't know really gets a pass from me to say, well, I saw it on Twitter, so I mentioned it, or I saw it on Nextdoor, and so I mentioned it. I don't give anybody a pass on that because there's a system in place, and we long know how to use that system, even if you're young, to rely on, ideally, the strength that you have at the place you work.
When I was just out of J school, I worked at America's Most Wanted.
Were you with John Turchin by any chance?
I know John Turchin, of course.
Good friend of mine, yeah.
I love John Turchin.
We both went to the University of South Florida.
I lived in D.C. for 2 years, and my boss was Phil Lehrman. And I remember I was airing a story, and it was going to be my first break 4. I had written it, and break 4 is in the fourth break. They would do this kind of 30-second story. And in it, I had gotten confirmation of our fugitive's name from a driver's license that the police had given me. And I had my second confirmation, which was another document. I can't remember what it was, but I did not have a third confirmation. Anyway, cut to this break for airs. And it turns out that these licenses are aliases, which we would have put the aliases up, but I didn't have his real name. And I'll never forget the tongue lashing I got, and so true, right? Because I had a driver's license, right? I had, what nowadays people would consider that one document and say, that's it, right?
Right.
And it's really funny because I never forgot that. I never, ever forgot that lesson. And I think that we are living in a time where people need to remember, no matter how they're getting their information, like, what are your other sources? What's your first eyewitness source? What's your first hand source? How do you know that this is the correct information? And we can do a lot of damage by not taking those steps.
You just have to stop and think, what is it that your role is as a reporter? And I'll give you the flip side of, got to get there with the camera, got to get the shot and everything else. So much footage is on social media these days. And 99% of the time, the people who posted it will share it with the traditional media. NBC, and I'm sure the other networks, all have a desk of people who reach out and say, oh, your handle is, handyman, can we use your footage? And handyman says yes. And the next thing you know, we have that footage. It doesn't need to be as it once was when I started. If you weren't there with your camera, it didn't happen. Now everybody's got it,
Everyone's an eyewitness.
Yeah, of course you have to check. Is there metadata? Is it real? Did somebody lie to me? I mean, there's so many checklists you have to do before you say, let's get that footage on the air.
And that comes back to being reliable and also being relatable as a reporter.
Yeah.
I think you have to have both of those to be successful and to get that correct information out there.
Yeah, well, there's going to be some reporters who really cut their chops, or however the expression is, at this firestorm, I call it. And there'll be some who failed. And those that failed hopefully learned, because they're not going to go away, and they should learn that this isn't about the moment of seeing me on TV. This is about being that layer of information that saves lives,
And I think that goes back to community. And one question I want to ask you is that as a community, we're all kind of scrambling to, like, what can we do, right? You run out and you try to volunteer, and maybe they're not taking any more volunteers, and how can we help? And you've talked to so many disaster victims. Is there something in common that you can tell everyone that this is what you've heard from them and what we can do to help a community who goes through a crisis like this?
Okay. I do know that in the aftermath of a major calamity, that finding old shoes and clothes in your closet that you haven't worn for 5 years and putting in a box and taking it to a center is probably just going to wind up in the garbage dump. Especially in a situation like you have in Los Angeles, it's a good feel good. But the most useful thing that I have seen in the aftermath of a calamity is, when the town is not destroyed and everything is gone, is a gift card to go to Walmart. Let somebody choose what they want. Nobody really wants to wear your old shoes. Nobody really wants to wear your old jeans. I mean, they really don't. They may wear it for a week if they have nothing, but I find that is the most useful. If you don't live in the community, another thing is, aside from finding a way to get aid through Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, I think the Jose Andres has set up the World Central Kitchen, phenomenal organization. And this is absolutely costs you nothing. Your neighbor lost their house. Call them up in a week, and call them up in 8 days and in 9 days. Stay in touch, console people. What so often happens is, oh my God, I can't believe what you've been through. This is so horrible. Tell me what I can do for you. And then they don't know what you can do for them. And a week later, you don't reach out to them. They don't think of calling you, or they're kind of ashamed to call and say, I need help, because there's a lot of pride that happens in the aftermath of this. Like, I don't need to take a handout. I can take care of myself. But to literally be engaged with people for a longer period of time than just the moment and the few days after, I think that is perhaps the most valuable. Some people literally need a place for their mail to go. Could you tell me? I'm trying to make an insurance claim and I don't even know where to have them send my mail. Guess what? Use my address. I'll give it to you. If you want me to do it, I'll take pictures of it on my phone and send it to you wherever you are. Or You don't know where you're going to stay and you've been in a shelter for 3 days? You want to come over for dinner? You want to sleep here? It can't be long term. I mean, be upfront, but help people out. Like, that is way, way, way valuable.
And I think you're bringing up a really good point, because the aftermath, a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, people forget.
Yeah.
Life moves on, and it doesn't move on for the people who are victims of disaster. They're still dealing with it. But I do think that the positive is, and what you keep hitting home, is that we're learning from it.
And
we're all learning from this.
And I really hope that people realize and recognize the role that reporters play day in and day out, and that this crystallized them to that in a calamity. But in this crisis, they learned to make it a habit to follow who it is that they choose to watch or read, and understand that what journalists do is a profession that takes its job very seriously and works to get out accurate information as quickly as possible that then you can choose to use for yourself. If that happens here, I'll be at least happy to know that people learn something beyond just, I hate that station because X, Y, and Z.
Right. And I think it's circling back to the fact that you go back to the basics. Homes always had the news on, right? When you're a kid, we used to read newspapers, right? They were dropped off at our door, day and night, in some cities, right? That's how you got your news. And we have gotten away from that. And there is a whole generation that gets their news from TikTok, and
Let me throw this in there. TikTok, which is now back.
Yeah, I know. If we had recorded this the other day, we would have been like, it's gone.
NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, all the K-Cows and KNBCs and KCBSs, they're all putting stuff on TikTok. This is a technology. Yeah. If you get it from TikTok, fine. But
just find
did
the
you
right source.
get it from a source that is actually in the business of trying to get real information out, as opposed to just some Yahoo saying something on TikTok so that he can get a lot of clicks? And remember, at the end of the day, if they get a number of clicks, they made money. So who knows where their agendas are?
100%. And AI is people have to be aware of the whole AI thing. I mean, there were tons of AI videos that were getting released that were not accurate information, that were not true.
Who takes their time to make those and try?
I don't know. Right. Listen, I
want to know those people, and I want to ask them why.
I know.
It's an opportunity for education. And I think that if they listen to this podcast, or they see some of the false information that's been out there and the domino effect that some of it has had, that the correct information can save lives. So I do think it's extremely important, because journalists are sourced and seasoned. They work so hard. Being prepared is incidental to their jobs and getting the right information. So it's an education opportunity.
Well, amen.
Exactly. And I think too, there is a place for gonzo journalism and all that, but it's still journalism at the end of the day. I mean, because I make documentaries, and that's where I took my career. And do we have a responsibility? So even if you do want to be that, because you feel like you have a voice and you want to get on social media, you still have a responsibility to make sure the information that you're putting out there is accurate, right? And that you have definitely confirmed the source, because there's a place for it in the world, but it just has to be, you have to have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility,
Yes.
on social media, and, So.
Yeah. At the end here, I would say, LA learned a lot. The aftermath of this will be painful. It will be long-lived. And I hate to say this, it will happen again. And so take the information and the experience, learn from it, share it with others, and at the end of the day, realize that you are your own savior. And all those other little pieces that you say to yourself, it doesn't impact me, ultimately it does.
It does, yeah.
It's very true.
Well, I mean, this has just been such an honor, I know, for all three of us,
Oh, well,
Carrie.
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes,
really,
thank
you have
so
no
much.
idea. I mean, you're my idol.
Well, let's put it this way. I didn't know you were the secret behind John Walsh, but
I don't know about the secret about John Walsh.
he's been a neighbor here. I've seen him many times at the airport. We've done some stories together over the years. Anyway, you had a lot of people in crossover that you and I know
Yes.
together. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, so nice meeting you.
Thank you so much. If you're listening and haven't followed us yet, take a moment to hit that follow button. Stay informed and never miss an important conversation that can make a real difference.
Find value in today's Oh Gross episode? Share it with friends, family, or anyone who could benefit from hearing these insights.
Follow us on socials at It's Oh Gross for updates, resources, and more helpful discussions.
Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend, taboos. Icky's what we do. Psoriasis, podiatrist, and pinworms too. It's so gross. No need for strife, because gross. Life is part of life, it's just science. Yeah, it's not so weird. We got the facts, nothing to fear. Oh, gross. It's just science, no, it's not weird. It's just science, nothing to fear. It's just science, so wipe those tears. It's boogers and